Hi, I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell here at the Unity Center in San Diego. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, please consider making a contribution. Go to our website. It's easy to do. Thank you in advance for that contribution. I know that for those of us who feel called into a spiritual teaching and path, that is very so for us, that we really desire to live our lives not only for ourselves and not even only for our immediate family, but that we desire to live our lives for something much beyond that, inclusive of that and beyond that. Here at the Unity Center, our mission is all about transforming lives, our individual lives, but we recognize that it's not enough, it's incomplete to simply stop there, that our mission, our purpose is really about transforming our lives and also doing whatever we can, however we can, wherever we can, whenever we can, to make the world a better place. Today, I want to talk to you about ideas that have to do with that, and it's grounded in knowing our purpose and knowing our perfection. And unfortunately, some of us have come through spiritual traditions that have taught us otherwise about ourselves, that have said that we are somehow inherently flawed. We don't believe that to be true in Unity. In Unity, we believe that we are born not in original sin, but in original blessing. That doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we need to learn and to grow. And it doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. It includes all of that, but it is grounded in the understanding that we are all starting from a place of inherent goodness, of, we might call it the Christ within, the God within, the divine within. And when we know that that is true of ourselves and we know that that is true of the other, no matter what the other looks like, then we begin to live our lives much more on purpose, knowing our purpose and knowing that innate goodness, that innate perfection that is perfect without being perfect, imperfectly perfect. I want to share a story with you that I found a number of years ago that moved me when I first found it and moves me today when I reflect on it. It's a story of a father of a young boy who was learning challenged. He had a learning disability. This young boy's name was Shia, and he was a student in a special needs school, a Jewish special needs school in Brooklyn, New York. And the father was participating in a fundraising dinner one evening when he started to speak about his son, Shia. He first talked about how much he appreciated the school and all the things that the school and the teachers and the staff would do to help these children who were learning challenged. But after praising them all, he said this at that dinner: "But where is the perfection in my son Shia? Everything God does is done with perfection. Yet my child can't understand things as other children do. My son can't remember facts and figures as other children do. And where is God's perfection in all that?" And he spoke with such emotion that there was stillness among the audience. They didn't quite know what to do with this father's deep and vulnerable sharing. And they were shocked by the question that he asked, and then he answered his own question. He said, "I believe that when God brings a child like this into the world, the perfection he seeks is in the way people react to this child. I believe that when God brings a child like this into the world, the perfection he seeks is in the way people react to this child." Profound words, profound words. And then the father went on to tell a story that demonstrated what he was trying to explain. He tells a story of Shia and he out for a walk, walking past a park and seeing some of Shia's friends playing baseball. And Shia was not only learning challenge, but he also had physical challenges. He was rather clumsy. He was not the one that was going to be playing on any sort of children's baseball team. And yet Shia turned to his father and said, "Do you suppose that they would let me play?" And of course, as any parent would, wanting to protect their child and make all things possible for their child, the father hoped that the case would be that some of the children would say yes. And so they approached the kids playing baseball, and father asked one of the boys, and one of the boys said this, "What the heck? We're losing by 6 runs and the game is in the 8th inning. I guess Shia can be on our team and we'll try to put him up to bat in the 9th inning." And so you can imagine how excited Shia was. Now, I'm going to have to read most of this story because those of you who know me and are part of this community know that I barely can tell the difference between a baseball and a football, so I won't get the story right. And the story is important that you hear it the way it unfolded, the way this father was able to understand and able to inspire others to understand perfection in imperfection. And so it was the bottom of the 9th, and the team scored again. Now with 2 outs and the bases loaded with a potential winning run on base, Shia was scheduled to be up to bat. Would they let him bat and give away their only chance to win the game? Surprisingly, they did. Even though everyone knew it was all but impossible for Shia to hit because he didn't even know how to hold the bat properly. But the pitcher moved in to lob the ball softly so that Shia could at least be able to make contact. He swung clumsily and missed, but one of the players came to help, stood beside Shia, and together they held the bat, and together they hit a slow ground ball. The pitcher picked up the soft grounder and could have easily thrown the ball to the first baseman. Shia would have been out, and that would have ended the game. But instead, the pitcher threw the ball and on a high arc to right field, far beyond the reach of the first baseman. Everyone started yelling, "Shia, run to first!" Never in his life had he run to first base. He wasn't even sure where it was. He scampered down the baseline wide-eyed and startled. By the time he reached first base, the right fielder had the ball. He could have thrown the ball to the second baseman that would tag Shia out, who was still running. But the right fielder understood what the pitcher's intentions were, so he threw the ball high and far over the third baseman's head. Everyone yelled, "Shia, run to second, run to second." Shia ran to second base as the runners ahead of him circled the bases toward home. As Shia reached second base, the opposing shortstop ran to him, turned him in the direction of third, and shouted, "Shia, run to third base." As Shia rounded third, the boys from both teams, ran behind Shia screaming, "Shia, run home." He ran home, stepped on home plate, and all 18 boys lifted him on their shoulders and made him the hero, as he had just hit a grand slam and won the game for his team. When the father concluded the story, he said, "That day, those 18 boys reached their level of God's perfection." That day, those 18 boys reached their level of God's perfection. Why are we here? How are we to be with one another? The song that Janet began our service with really answers that question, doesn't it? We're here to love, serve, and remember. And each of us is called to love and to serve and to remember in a different context. For each of us walk in different circles. Each of us have different people that we live with or work with or are neighbors to. And therefore, each of us have different spheres of influence. But no matter who is in our sphere, and no matter what journey our soul has made in this incarnation, we still continue to be here, to love, to serve, and to remember. There's a similar story in Jesus' life recorded in one of the Gospels. As Jesus went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned? Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Sidebar here, do you notice how old the blame game is? They wanted Jesus to identify whose mistake was this, who sinned that this man was born blind. Jesus' answer, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. This happened, his blindness happened, so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. And then the story goes on to say that Jesus took some mud from the ground and some spittle and put it on the man's eyes, and he was eventually made to see. Whether the story is historically, literally correct or is pointing to a mystical teaching doesn't change the invitation that it is about how we are to show up with one another in those times and places where things are definitely less than perfect. What is it to open our heart to another? I am reminded of the words that a ministerial friend and colleague of mine of many years ago said to me. Her name is Mary, and it had to do with one of several trips to India that she had taken and one that I had taken. And if you have traveled to India and if you have spent any time there and been in any spiritual communities or gatherings there, you cannot help but return home transformed by the experience, for the things that you see are things that we don't see in the same way here. And I can remember when I was struggling with some of that and processing some of that, these words that Mary shared with me. She said, every time I go to India, I'm grateful for the soul of India, for those who have volunteered to be the catalyst for the rest of us learning compassion. Every time I go, I am grateful for the soul of India, for those who have volunteered to be the catalyst for the rest of us learning compassion. We can look at the Shayas of this world, and we can and must do all that we can to be of help and to be of support. But in addition to that, I think we are meant to be broken wide open to love and to kindness, to deeper understanding and to deeper and stronger compassion. The immature spiritual part of us, perhaps, or the immature part of us might ask, well, how can a loving creator allow for people to be born blind or disabled or somehow physically challenged? And that same mindset screams out and asks questions like, why doesn't God do something? Well, the truth of the matter is God has done something. For you see, we understand that God is not some being sitting somewhere in a distant sky that decides to intervene and do something the way a parent might intervene to help a child. Why doesn't God do something is entirely the wrong question. God has done something, if you will. God is a very creative life force of life itself. And that creative life force has created you and me. And we are the ones that are created to do something. And what we do and how we show up is evidence of Spirit of God at work. The real questions should not be why do these happen or what is perfection, but the real question should begin with why are we here to begin with? And I go back to the line in the song. We are here to love, to serve, and to remember. That's why we've taken on birth. And we are uniquely designed and equipped to love, serve, and remember in the very communities, in the very circles in which we live and move and operate. I want to read a piece to you that I found, and I regret that I don't have the name of the person to credit this to. I'll have to go back and see if I can find it. But I was moved by this, and see if you can't connect with some of these ideas. It's entitled, Everything Happens for a Reason. Sometimes people come into your life and you know right away that they were meant to be there, to serve some sort of purpose, to teach you a lesson or help you figure out who you are or who you want to become. You never know who these people may be, but when you lock eyes with them, you know that very moment that they will affect your life in some lasting and profound way. And sometimes things happen to you at the same time that may seem horrible, painful, and unfair. But in reflection, you realize that without overcoming those obstacles, you would never have realized your personal potential, strength, willpower, or heart. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens by chance or by luck. Illness, injury, love, lost moments of true greatness, and sheer stupidity all occur to test the limits of your soul. Without these small tests, life would be like a smoothly paved, straight, flat road to nowhere. Safe and comfortable, but dull and utterly pointless. The people you meet affect your life. The successes and downfalls that you experience can create who you are, and the bad experiences can be learned from. In fact, they are probably the most poignant and important ones. If someone hurts you, betrays you, or breaks your heart, forgive them, for they have helped you learn about trust and the importance of being cautious to whom you open your heart to. If someone loves you, love them back unconditionally, not only because they love you, but because they are teaching you to love and open your heart and eyes to the little things. I was thinking deeply about this piece and the story of Shia and his teammates, and I thought there are three kinds of people in a way that come into our lives, and I want to briefly share them with you and describe them to you. Number one, some people come into our lives to inspire us, to be better people, to perfect us. Some people come into our lives to inspire us, to be better people, to perfect us. I don't know when I say those words who comes to your mind, but when I think of the people who inspire me to be better, they are the humanitarians of this world. I think of people long gone, people like Mahatma Gandhi. I think of Mother Teresa. I think of people who are still here who inspire me to be a better version of myself, the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh. I think of those who have led civil rights changes that inspire me to try to find a similar degree of courage and strength and moral fiber, to realize I can't do everything, but I certainly have to do something. And so I believe that there are people who have come into your life, who you have come to understand or learn about, whose sole purpose is to inspire you to be a better version of yourself. And they seem to lift all of humanity who are willing to be lifted into a higher vibration. Secondly, I think some people come into our lives to challenge us to be better people, to perfect us. Some people come into your life, some people come into my life. They may come and go, or they may come and stay, but they are here to challenge us to be better people. They are the sandpaper people to our souls. We don't always choose them, but sometimes we do. Sometimes they are in our families. Sometimes they work for us, or we work for them. Sometimes they are our neighbors. I think of the position I had as an assistant minister to a unity minister who shall remain nameless. That was the most challenging working relationship I'd ever had in my life, and even to this day, I've never had as challenging a working relationship as I had working as the assistant minister to that person. To say that he was cruel and unloving and unkind would be an understatement. And yet, in that very experience, that most challenging experience, that coarsest of sandpaper working relationship I'd ever had, I learned so much about what I would at least try to strive to do or not do if I were ever to be a minister of my own spiritual community. And though not perfect, I do believe I perfected some of what I learned through that incredibly painful and challenging relationship. Would I have picked that kind of relationship consciously by choice? No. But did it change me? Did it challenge me? It absolutely did. And I bet that's true for you too. I bet you can look at individuals in your life that are there, whether you chose to bring them in or not, are there in your life to challenge you to be a better version of yourself. But the choice of what you do with that lies in your hands. And then the third, I believe some people come into our lives to mold and shape us to be better people. And these could be the cheerleaders in our lives. They could be a prayer partner in our life. Could be a trusted friend or a therapist. I think in my own life of the molding and shaping that has happened in me as a mom over the last, probably 8 or 9 years. Some of you know that John and I have a daughter who is not neurotypical. She has a learning challenge that is called nonverbal learning disability. And what it means is neurologically, her brain does not function the way a neurologically typical brain functions. It's a relatively new, meaning I think maybe less than 20 years old, condition that is being researched and studied and tried to be understood. But in my process of trying to know better how to support and how to reach and how to teach her, the amount of molding and shaping that has had to happen in me as a result of that relationship has been some of the greatest both gift and challenge in my life, but has changed at depth who I think I am and why I think I'm here. And I share that and each of these kinds of people, those who come into our life to inspire us, those who come into our lives that challenge us, and those that come into our lives that mold and shape us, because if we want to be able to be there to support them, we have to change some. We have to find a way to be. That in each of these situations, we are called to be like Shaya's teammates. We are called somehow, in some way, to be a more perfect, and I cringe when I use that word because you also understand I'm not talking about perfectionistic. To be perfect is unrealistic, and yet we can be a much better version of ourselves. And in each of these kinds of relationships lies the opportunity for that to happen. It's not why doesn't God do something? It's what can we do? What can I do in the relationships that I find myself in? And I hope that you're inspired to ask yourself the same question. What can you do? What are you inspired to be molded and shaped into in the relationships that you find yourself in? If each of us works within the circles that we live and move, together we have tremendous power to bring about significant change. It was Gandhi who said, "We must be the change we wish to see in the world." Why are we here? We are here to love, serve, and remember. That is both our perfection and our purpose. Namaste.